Hello, cousins. Welcome to SASS Mass, our spirituality and support symposium. Think morning witchy chats around a warm campfire. The recording has started, and by participating in SASS, you agree to read and accept the terms of engagement, which we will post in the chat. We ask that you mute during the recording for clarity during the meeting and for the afterplay. We'll now get started with a few announcements.
Hello, witches. I was making my tea. And I forgot sometimes that I do that. I don't know why, because I do it all the time. I'm going here, the lights back. So, hello, I'm Maria, for those of you that might be new here. Um, we are super excited because we just welcomed a bunch of witches into the courtyard. We sent out, going to be like sending out some more newsletters. We've got about 4 to 5 new workshops that we're going to be posting. Coming up, we've got a new meeting for the courtyard that we are kind of brainstorming on. But we are super excited to kind of be offering SASS Mass for everyone in the courtyard on the first Sunday of every month. So we hope as many people can join us as possible. A lot of people have been asking like for community, a ways to connect and at Bright and Dark. Although we love interacting with you in the app space, like in posting, this is the best way us neurodivergent witches can interact and answer your questions. So we hope as many can join this space. For those that might be watching the replay, the way you can find us is community.brightanddark.org, and that will get you set up with the app. You can actually access us from the web as well if you don't want to download the app. So for those members in foundations, we just posted a new shadow study meeting that's going to be part of our foundations meetings that Ezra is facilitating. So check that out if you haven't already. Yeah, and like happy Witches New Year, happy Halloween, happy entering hermit mode, all of the things. So yay. That's all for now.
Good morning, cousins. I just realized my mic is like way far away from me. There. All right. So before we get started with our conversations today, let's kind of bring our minds off of all autopilot and make a statement or declaration of intention for this space. Like, what are you doing here? What are we doing here? Right? You can either follow along with mine or create your own that you can do, because this is your practice, and this is a space that you get to explore with that. So hand on your heart and take a deep breath. I choose now in this moment to align with my whole self, to pull the book that tells my story from its place upon the shelf. I enter now this circle made of trust and hope and power, and I show up for my practice in this space and at this hour, because I am home. Did you guys hear that? Did you hear me smack my hand on the desk? It's like, it is like an inch too close to me and I can't back up anymore because I got this behind me. And so I keep doing that. And it's just like my wrists that keep hitting the thing. Gong. We did a ritual, an ancestral veneration ritual for cycle breakers, black sheep, here where I'm at. We had a bunch of friends over, and it was amazing in every, like, I don't have the words. It was amazing. And I don't know. When you do big workings like that, it changes you. I felt such a big release after that ritual that we did that I've been feeling like starting to feel more connected and like more channely in the last like 2 days, which is great because like I was saying in the live this morning, that's usually a sign to me that my physical body and physical experience is not requiring as much of my attention because I've been processing this big change in my life and this like big move and everything. And so I haven't been channeling as much. So I haven't been creating as much content. And so it's this practice in being okay with that and being okay with, okay, sometimes my body needs my attention and I can't be like producing all of the time. So that's been this amazing practice. But to be getting that information again, man, is it coming through with a kind of clarity that I haven't experienced yet. And that's exciting for me. To me, that's telling me that the work that I've done over the course of this last year and the release, resulting release that I did at that Halloween ritual was effective in removing distortion from the information that I'm like receiving. Does that make sense? Well, that's exciting to me. I'm really looking forward to starting to translate it in a way that I can communicate it and share with you guys. But damn, is there a fire burning? How many of you, just by show of like hearts, are feeling like this doneness? Like you're fucking over it and done participating in something that you don't believe in, right? It's to the point where there's a fire inside about it. This like, I don't like ascribing gender to like energy because it's so I don't know. But there is a special kind of rage building that is the kind of rage that is cleansing. Does that make sense? And it's interesting. It's an interesting flavor to kind of dig into. And I'm curious. I'm curious about why are so many of us done right now? And what does that, how is that going to unfold? Right. And I love that we have spaces like this that we get to come together and actually talk about what we're experiencing with it and how we're feeling about it and what we're picking up on. Right. Yeah. We've been taught to like resist our anger, that our anger is bad or wrong and that it must be changed or dampened. It's like, what if it's supposed to be the catalyst for change, right? Because I don't know about you, but I'm super fucking stubborn. And sometimes I need like a. So if you're new to SASS, if this is your first time, I am just making conversation. If at any point you want to like join in the conversation or you want to talk about something completely different, you just do what Karen just did and put your hand up and we'll pass the mic off to you. This is just how we get conversation going. Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. So while I find it, I put a note in, take me a second to find it. I put a note in the foundation's chat so I'm going to read it because it took me like an hour to make sure that I had all my words right. Kind of embarrassing, but I wanted to be really clear. and the request was to bring it up today. I do want to say that I sent the message out. I got some really great feedback from Ocean and Taryn, and there were some key points in both of their messages that really hit home. And then, like, which allowed me to be open for some things that happened later on that night. They were super emotional, which then allowed me to make more progress this morning. And then I could actually hear what Jen Marie was saying this morning, which helped kind of answer a lot of things. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is sort of start with what I put out there, because I think Jen Marie is itching to talk about it. And then, if appropriate, if I feel like it's good, I will talk about what happened afterwards and where I am, if everyone's okay with that. Okay, so here's my message. Seeking answers or maybe validation. Ritual is known to calm the mind, which can calm the body, which helps calm the mind more. Quote, gets us out of our head and into the moment. A child getting out of bed to pray on the side of it. Episcopalians and Catholics love rituals throughout their service. Jen Marie prepping for her divination, scrubbing for surgery by surgeons. Like, we have rituals everywhere. So are these rituals preparing us to be open for the moment, or are they simply a transition from doing one thing to another? Probably either and both, depending on the person and the situation, right? Sorry, Jen Marie, I called you out constantly because you're my only example. Jen Marie calls the elements, but her guides run the divination. Others might call their guides or a deity. Everyone has their thing, building their thing. But what is this step about specifically? Aren't these elements, guides, deities here all the time? Or are we knocking on their door and saying, now please, respectfully, of course? Or at its very core, is it the ritual that opens us up to be present with them? So we're really not knocking on their door, we're opening our door from their knock. I've lived in a world of science and psychology, and I'm not finding connection with Jen Marie's practice or any kind of prayer, meditation. Nothing is making sense as I find my own practice because I don't think I understand the intent. When I begin tarot now, I ensure I'm in a safe place and I simply take a breath. So I feel like I'm missing the depth, or maybe I'm just scratching the surface because I don't have a ritual. But the cards typically, like 8 out of 10 times, are very insightful and helpful. But those 2 out of 10 times, I am in deep suffering and not able to think clearly or feel open. Like, I can't get out of my own head. And that's where I feel like a ritual would really help me, but I don't have one. And like, ritual works because it's done frequently. I know everyone's different, and what's amazing about this community is that everyone is expected to be different. So I welcome everyone's perspective and insight. I just don't feel like I understand. So thank you in advance for your time. I'm genuinely asking for weigh-ins from everyone who has time. And then Maria taught me that you could do a video on a spoken message. So that's my message. Yes, Jen Marie, would you like to go next?
I love this so much because I love explaining the nuts and bolts and the whys and the hows of what it is that we're actually doing. It's like what I was talking about this morning in the live about like not using jargon. And that's when I learned that a bunch of people say that word in a lot of different ways. But because it's so like people have different interpretations of it and everything. So for me, what I am doing specifically with the ritual that I do in the morning or to prepare for divination is a process of getting my system. And when I talk about my system, I'm talking about my physical body, my energetic body, and my mind all in the same place at the same time, right? And it is in my practice, I am inviting and opening that system. We are choosing to acknowledge and invite participation from the environment around me as well, because I respect that, you know, they got their own thing going on. And the words that I use in my invitation are very, very specific, because consent is so important in my practice. And so if there's an invitation, you know, if you bear witness to the working that I'm doing and you agree with that, I would appreciate your blessing and participation, right? That's what I'm doing. It's an invitation for collaboration out of respect for what they bring to my practice and my experience, right? And when I say, what is it? I'm going in my head through thing. I make an invitation for anyone who loves me to join in this space as well, because I know that I have supporters that I don't even know about. And so I keep it open in that way, because whether I know that you support me or not, you're welcome in this space, right? If I know that you are doing that, because I am also aware that I have, I don't know, what, 100,000 years of genetic contribution to my physical like experience. And there are so many supporters in my ancestral line that I don't know about and couldn't possibly invite directly. And that's what I'm doing. So it's this acknowledgement of a deep connection within and in my like external experience. And so that's what I'm doing when I'm going through that ceremony, is just like pulling everything off of autopilot and bringing myself very, very present. So
That makes sense. I like the reminder about inviting and consent, because I just realized even my statement, "Aren't they around all the time?" is pretty entitled. So they're not just sitting around waiting for me, right? Like, you know, and that's a really great reminder. I am not the center of the universe. I am the center of
but
my,
it's interesting that that's on your autopilot though, right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And you know, you can approach magic from the other perspective too. You can demand that the elements show up in your space. You can demand that you can approach your relationship with magic in that way. And in fact, most traditions that that we have open access to, that is how they engage with magic. They command things to do their will, right? It's through
Yeah.
force of will.
I
And
just think so
that
wrong.
there isn't a right or wrong. It's just the polarities. And most practices kind of fall on that. You can be very intentional. You can that's alchemy. You can intentionally polarize your experience, but yeah. Go ahead, Silver.
Yeah, I love this question so much. This, so, you know, I'm also like a big science psychology person. I think a lot of us are actually, like, you know, and I actually, like, from my experience, as I was getting more and more into science, the more I started realizing how many of the studies that I was reading were literally proving that the concepts in magic work. So like science would call it affirmations, but there's so many studies that they're doing psychologically to improve people's lives, that they're doing the exact same like process that we're doing. They're just calling it something else. Like it, for me, I always call it, like, it's an aesthetic difference. And sometimes even with like some of the more like religious based magic, like where people that would call, like, you know, we might use like universe, or science might say universe, and then magical people might say source, and then, you know, religious people say God, right? And there are some of the religious people that I know that they're also using the exact same process, but their aesthetic difference is that it is a religious experience, and they are using words that are coded in that like aesthetic. And so what's that?
Their jargon.
Yes, their jargon. Yes. I love how you said jargon too. Like that, but yeah, like words are made up and the points don't matter, but we all have different ways we say them, and we also have different associations with every single word that exists. And that can be really hard. Like I know it was for me, being neurodivergent and thinking very literally about things, and sometimes that can make it seem like we have control of our universe and we can understand it fully because we have words that make it concrete, right? That makes it seem like that, but really that's just our experience of those words. And like there's the concept of like, I have no idea what red looks like to you, and I never will. Like that kind of thing. We generally agree that if I point to something that's red, then we agree, but I'll never know what your exact perception of it is. And every word is like that. Like every single word is like that. And honestly, every single thing that we're interacting with is like that. And so when it comes to ritual, what I actually think I wrote something about this or read something about this recently, both, but there was somebody that was talking about how ritual, like you mentioned too, this really resonated with me, that ritual, it is using techniques that science figured out, right? Like the smell is correlating to memory, and so we use smoke or sprays or whatever. And when we get all those senses involved, we are getting our body involved, and we are bringing these spiritual concepts or ideas, all of the like intellectualization that we think about in our mind, and we're bringing it down into our body, and we're doing that habitually because we're doing it ritualistically. And so generally, like we're doing it with the moon, we're doing it with the sun, we're doing it, whatever it is, however often, you choose to do it. If it's monthly, the yearly cycle, we're doing it, we're getting in sync with that. And we're teaching our bodies how to, I'm saying we, but this is my experience of it, of course. But like I'm still gonna say we. I like the word we. It's the royal we for me. But it's we're using it or we're forming a relationship with it so that our bodies can live our beliefs more fully. Because we're training, like we were trained as a kid, like in school, to like sit down and be still and do what the authority said. And we ended up being trained, our bodies being trained to do something that our minds and hearts do not believe. And so, oh, sorry. I think that means I'm done talking soon, but and so for me, these rituals, like they're literally my body, teaching my body and learning from my body how to interact with my own belief system in a way that doesn't, that dissolves the cognitive dissonance, which or internal conflict that we have. Because when we're living a life that we don't believe in, that causes a lot of inner turmoil and a lot of like inner pain. And so the more that we shift and shift and shift with each of these rituals, each of these cycles, like the more literally like aligned we become with our
Yes.
self. So, yeah.
And that's totally what happened after this year.
I love this question so much. This is exactly the like the things I think about all the time. So like how to talk about this stuff with people. So let's see, is it
I think Jenny's next.
Maria? Or yeah.
Do you want to go next, Jenny? You want me to go next? Okay. Yeah, this is a great topic because it's so many topics in one, which is great. And I wanted to just, but something you said like struck me, Karen. You are the center of your own universe. And so, like, I know what you were intending by saying that. Like, we were talking about like asking for consent and inviting the spirits in, but also you do have the support from your spirit team 100%, 24/7, right? But like, this is how I interact with that. So I'll just share like my experience. Um, like my spirit team is always there, but they don't always intervene. So receiving support in a way that I'm supported by I have that help, but that doesn't mean that I get they intervene unless I ask for the intervention. So that's kind of how I like interpret it. And that's why when I'm specifically doing a working, it's like, yeah, they can just hang out and like do what they normally do, whatever the spirit team does, all day long,
Do
like
they do in their
whatever,
down?
yeah, whatever they're doing. Or I could be like, hey, y'all, like, let's do it. Let's do the thing and invite them. And then the way that we're practicing in a connection based magic, or the way that I practice in a connection based magic is, yeah, just that invitation. Also, like, this is the season of ancestors, and so to what Jemri said, like, wanting that wanting those ancestors like to participate, especially like you know thinking that we're our ancestors like wildest dreams and the things that we're doing, and so yeah, like I want them to like participate and just be invited, right? Like everybody wants to be, you get the invitation, right? Everyone wants to be
Always
invited to
welcome.
the yeah. So um that's just kind of my take on it. Is it's I don't see them as they're like coming and going, but it's when I'm doing those workings, I'm like being intentional about what I'm doing for that working and like actually asking like for that participation in the specific thing. Um, so I hope that that makes sense.
It does.
And yeah, there's something that Ezra said too that I had something, but I didn't write it down. So I'm going to pass it over to Jenny while I drink my tea and I'll come back to it.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to unraise my hand. Okay, there we go. Hello, everyone. I am brand new. This is my first SASS, and I apologize if you can hear my dogs in the background because they're barky, barky buttholes. Um, anyway, Karen, thank you for asking this question. You brought up some super cool points that I didn't actually have a chance to read in the feed or whatever. So thank you for asking that. And interestingly enough, I also had a connected question about how to start slash form your own rituals. Because I'm such a newbie, I feel like I don't necessarily know what aspects I want to integrate into my practice. Like, I don't know if I relate to the elements enough to bring them in. I only know like one deity, but like Jen Marie said, I never even thought of how many other deities or ancestors along the line are there to support me. Um, so my multifaceted question, first of all, like, how do you get started finding the right words? I know personally, as like ADHD and someone who really needs bottom up processing, I struggle so much to start something if I don't have all of the details perfectly in place already. And I know part of that is the big cappy pappy and all that stuff, but like how do I get started if I don't feel like I have the perfect words? Um, and then the other part I wanted to say about like whether or not our guides are available to us all the time or if we're knocking on their door, which was a super cool concept, by the way. But throwing back in the whole neurodivergence thing, I don't know about y'all, but like I would not want to have their input at all times because we are already so overstimulated by just existing that I don't know that it would be safe or like helpful to anyone to have their input at all times. But totally down to hear what anyone else has to say. I think that's it.
I'm so glad that I already had my hand up for this. I'm just gonna put that out there and I'm gonna lower my hand so I don't forget. Okay. Whew. All right, so I put my hand up to answer a question in the comments because it's a great question. But I so want all up in on this as well. And my giftings are triggered by questions. And so can I and then of course Petra's chiming in. I love this. Oh my God, this is such a great sass. Okay. First of all, I want to validate your experience, Jenny, because you I want to show you something, okay? By show of hearts, how many of you can relate to what Jenny just said? That, like, where do I start? Like, what do I do if I have this knowing, but I just like, what? Right? It's so common in our journey, our path that we walk, that's why we created foundations. That like 12-month, it's a fucking process. It's a whole thing. That's why it's so well supported, because it is literally doing what you're talking about, of like peeling back that social conditioning, that influence, or helping you identify that influence of the big cappy pappy and actually create your own relationship with whatever it is. And every month there's this different facet of it. So what you're experiencing is so common that we're able to actually create this like program about it. So that I'm hoping is validating because of that. It's like, I'm surprised there aren't more hands up to talk about this. God, I hate to be like cryptic about it, but the answer to the question of where to start truly is where you are, right? And oftentimes we think that we have to actually do something in order to start something, but the other side, the spirit world, doesn't operate with the same like rules with regards to time. That it operates about like choices when you've made a decision about something, right? So you've already made this decision to start this path, and so you're already on it. And so when you're in these like very beginning stages, just reminding yourself of that, is that just that choice that you made, like that's all that you got to do. Like that's it. And everything else is about cultivating that relationship of trust in this new reality, even though it's like the original. Okay. And as far as like your spirit team stuff, okay, not all of us experience this facet of the human experience as external guides that are directing us and giving us information. Some of us experience it more like an internal guidance system of nudges, like things are highlighted, things catch our attention. I am more of a internal guidance system kind of processor. And it feels to me that just like that, like my curiosity is pinged, or something is like hot, like has my attention, that I can't quite explain why it has my attention. That is usually my guidance or guidance system, like helping, right? And this part of your system kind of operates in the way that I just went in like 6 different directions. That just went fractal on me. Did I answer your question? Did that help? Okay, if you want to ask a direct question, we can do that too. That would be fun. I know it's hard. It's like having to it's like condensing all of the things into one. Where to start? It's everything that I keep getting is that you've already started, like you're already doing it. But that's one of the most frustrating things to hear. And I like, that's great. There's so many. Go
I
ahead.
have the one question.
Okay.
Because I'm already in foundation. So I totally get that, like, I'm already on the right path.
Okay.
But I see, like, with how connected I feel to even my card pulls just by participating in like your ceremony before divination on the lives, like that's it. It's the actual like words themselves. How do you find so that I can create my own ritual? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It absolutely makes sense. And the words that I use evolve depending on where I am in my practice. What I used to say 2 years ago during that ceremony was totally different than what I say now because my understanding of my relationship to all of those things has changed. And so I changed that. And you can start by just doing like automatic writing, right? Where you can just say, and just like, it could be anything, a statement of intention that feels powerful to you. And try it for a little while. If it's like, you know what, I can go deeper, or if something else makes more sense, or you hear someone else say something that kind of like your physical body responds in some way to it, like those kinds of questions are what build that. Is what is my relation? What do I want to do with this ceremony? What's the point of it? And then what does my system need in order to get to that point? Does that make sense? And that's just like truthfully, it could be anything, but that's just the format that I use. I'm going to come back to the other question that I originally put my hand up about, because there's a whole bunch of witches all lined up. Are you guys weighing in? Yeah, all of those weigh-ins. So Silver, is your hand still up from the last time? It's new. It's a freshie. Okay, go
It's a
ahead.
fresh one. Yeah. That's funny because I did have something else to say, but then I'm really glad that that I get to respond right here. And so this is a great question. I felt the same way after I joined Bright and Dark, and I was starting to like find like my sea legs as on magic and want to put my own like, you know, my own words to it. And the message that I got was to look at the work that I've already done. And what for me, that meant going back and looking at my old like writing that I wrote as a kid and my old drawings that I drew as a kid, and seeing the themes that ran through the work that I'd already done. Right. So like I was able to examine things that I had not reread or looked at in a long time and see what threads there still resonate with me. And I was like, whoa, that's really deep that I, you know, did that all the way back then. That clearly is something that resonates very deeply in me. My child self knew this, right? And so for me, that ended up being actually like, I was really into like deities, Percy Jackson, characters, that kind of stuff, right? And so I've always been a character-centric person. And so I'm really glad you brought up deities, because not everybody is going to resonate with that. But for me, characters, they just make sense to my brain. They always have since I was a kid, right? I've hyper focused on characters over and over again. And so when I started realizing that, and then kind of shedding a little bit of the like religious trauma that told me that like I didn't want, shouldn't be going in that direction, right? I started to embrace that. And then I was able to see these characters more as threads that attach me to certain aspects of my magic. And that works for me. Like our brains like human brains like to personify things anyway. And I think that's a very good tool to use. Like I could go into like what I think deities like are and all that stuff, but that's just my interpretation of them. But honestly, it's a specific connection to a specific aspect of myself, like in short. And so once I'm able to name that, like give it a name, or either a name that already exists, or like, what we were just talking about. Somebody mentioned like Hecate, like in the chat at some point. I don't know if that was today, but like, like whether or not like that is a name of a deity that already like exists, or I'm creating a new player essentially, like that kind of thing, in order to attach to specific ideas that I want to like work with in my practice. Once I find it easier to find the words, once I narrow it in that way. So that would be like anybody that's kind of like on the cusp of wanting to know what their own personal brand is. I would say go look at your inner child and see what they were doing, because they knew their shit. So yeah. I think Maria, I'm not sure though.
I think so.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
think so. Yay. So I will share some things. I just say like when I stutter or stop talking, it's the 50 thoughts of what to say first. But I wrote some things down. Okay, so Jenny, that's such a great like point about being overstimulated. And I never actually kind of thought about it, because the way that I interact with my like spirit team is different from the humanness interactions that I have. And I feel like maybe I've developed some good boundaries with my spirit team, where like, don't fucking wake me up in the middle of the night. That's not happening. We're not doing that. I like sleep way too much. So stuff like that, right? Like, and I'm joking, but really I'm not. Like, that is a boundary that I have. Like, don't wake me up in the middle of the night. And if I hear something, I'm like, no, not today. So I think when I started interacting with spirit was from a place of like wanting a divination practice. I started with kind of tarot, the pendulum, then got into mediumship and etc. But I didn't claim my witchiness until really 3 years ago, but I've been doing like divination for like over 20. And so like it just got me thinking like I like to like Jen Marie's right been doing rituals for decades, right? And like has experience as a high priestess. So like when I met her and engaging in the rituals we do, especially in person, I'm like, oh, this is so fancy. Like, and Jen Marie's like the fanciest, unfanciest person I think you ever meet. Like that's how just, like so when you're listening to Jen Marie, like she's coming from that place of experience of having decades of doing the thing, right? And she's had a lot of teachers over the way and then has got to cultivate what resonated with her. And so with that, it's okay in this, especially, I can't speak for every witch, right? And there's a lot out there, but in Bright and Dark from any of the facilitators, like it's okay to just copy, because sometimes you just do need to start someplace, and you just do need to start. And sometimes you don't have a reference. And so you just, right, you might use the incantation Jen Marie uses. And then like Karen, she's saying, well, I don't really feel that. Like, I'm not really feeling that that's connecting with me. And then it leads you down a rabbit hole of like, what does connect? And back to like the core of what we do at Bright and Dark. That's why the shadow work is so important. And like, you'll hear us say that over and over, is because it is about finding what aligns with you. And to find what aligns with you, it's like really that authentic part and connection. And it is shedding the social conditioning and what other people have told you is right for you, because only you know what is like right for you, right? And so the how you start, you don't even have to say anything. Like for me, a lot of times it's a feeling, but so it's just a feeling, or in my mind, like in a couple, we did a little meditation thing with a group in Foundations, where it was a visualization, and in like, I don't even need to have a candle in front of me, because I can light one in my mind, and then it's on, right? And I'm on. And so, and that's actually a boundary that I have. Like when I am doing workings, there is an altar place, but it's in my mind that I go to, and I'm like, okay, I'm listening, right? And it's just a focused time, right? Because we are humans and we're having a human experience in human lives. And so there's a lot of busyness we have in our human experience, right? And so having times where even that you're just like tuned in, however it says, and for me, like it's just a feeling. I might do a little grounding, I might do some breathing, but in my mind, I go up in my altar space and I light a candle. And so spirit knows, like, hey, like, I'm like, I just called you, like, hello, is anybody home? Does anyone have any messages for me? So like, I'm focused, I'm gonna maybe write some shit down, or maybe I'm gonna like record it on my notes on my phone. um so it's, and I can feel it, it's a feeling in my body that is that place of connection. So that's just like another way. And I think I personally like the fancy, having like the incantation, because I love that. And like, I was a theater kid, like that all is awesome for me and is exciting for me. So that vibes with what I want to do. But every working also doesn't call for like the display of the, like if I'm just going to sit and pull my tarot cards, I may just grab, my working candle, light it, just say, I am here, I'm ready. And something times that simple, and then I'm going to do my reading. But if we're doing a group ritual, a bigger working, if I'm transmuting a bigger like energy, like, people are mentioning elections, like things like that, like bigger energy workings like that, I'm probably am going to be, and Jen Marie is a very intentional. Every single thing that she does is super intentional. So everything has a meaning for it. It's not just like for the show, but it is also great for the show. But it's not like that. The purpose, the intention is very intentional. Um, and now that you've said the words, right, you're actually claiming kind of this and setting this intention. Now this manifestation is now set in motion, that you're seeking this. So I believe that it will come to you. Like you're just going to be out in everyday life in your lived experience, and someone's going to say something, or you're going to see something, or you're going to watch something, and you're going to be like, oh, that's it. And then it's going to send you down another path and another rabbit hole, right? And that's like how. So I believe that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if you come back as early as next week and say, hey, I had this experience, like this is what happened to me, and share that, because now you kind of said it right out loud, especially in a group of witches. So things happen a little bit faster when we do that. I mentioned we can have boundaries with our spirit team, and Petra even a couple weeks ago had like talked about that. And someone about in the chat, like magic versus science. And someone said, I saw on the TikTok, like magic is just science that hasn't been explained yet. And like that resonated with me a bit. I mean, also there's the shadow work I want to say too around fear, especially if we're coming from religious backgrounds that taught us that we were gonna be punished for various things. And so spending some time kind of working through your shadow work, because I feel like that's important in like making those connections, right? So for me, for me personally, I'm not afraid of anything in the spiritual realm, any deity, anything that I may encounter. I'm not fearful. I don't believe anything can harm me. I see us on like an equal playing field. Like it's just as exchange, it's an exchange, it's data collection. I get to choose what I want to interact with. I don't believe I can be hexed. And most importantly, I don't believe that any spell that I could ever do is going to like cause harm, right? Like I'm never going to fuck it up because it's from me. If I'm doing it authentically, it's from me. It's the best that I got in that moment, and I may change over time the more data that I receive, right? But I don't believe I'm going to do something wrong to cause me harm. It's just all information. It's just the experience and then the data that I'm going to collect after that. But I don't know, that felt important to say, and maybe other people want to weigh in on that. So let's see who's next. And Virginie, you're next. Hello.
Hello there, and I'm gonna weigh in on a few points about what about I'm French for those that don't know, so I don't always know how to speak clearly, but I'm gonna try. And about a few subjects. What I'm gonna start with is what Jean-Marie says often in SASS on the Join Us Live and other things, that here we do connections magic, about connection for being connected with ourselves, being connected with our peoples, being connected with the guide or the elements that's gonna help us. For me, it's that, but it's also more. I like the triangle, the figure like that. And I used it before. I'm gonna use it here too. For me, there is, for example, the conscious, the thoughts, and the energy. When you're conscious, you start to have thoughts. When you are having thoughts, you're having opinions with a big O sometimes about things, about the world that you're living in. And when you're having opinions, you're giving form in some ways to you decide what the world is gonna look like, what is gonna be. And you said a little earlier that you were worried about what words to use, and I would answer to you as as a novice witch and as a Christian, that words don't matter. In fact, what matters is the intention, is the conscious, is the truth, is the energy that you put it in there. Thanks, Petra. And so that was the first point. It's an idea. What I just said, it's an idea that came to me while I was listening to you. It happens a few times in the day. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. Doesn't care. I don't care. And the second point is a little explanation before, so that you have the background. I like to read. I like to read books. I like to read manga, manhwa, and all a lot of things. And I discovered when I was specifically reading manhwas and Chinese book that they have a way of thinking about the magic, about the universe that that made me think about you were just saying about the effect of magic around us. That's how I understood it a little bit, and I was seeing it is that the the universe is not only something physical you can touch, it's also concepts. Scientific concepts that we are learning, discovering, that we don't understand, but we still try. And those concepts, ideas, thoughts, opinions. You see where I'm going a little bit. When you attain a certain level of magic, you is not only about how you see the words, that you make the words be. It's not about only your eyes. It's about your hands, that you can actively act on it. And it's quite well described in the those Chinese story about sometimes they use hermits, other Taoists. There are different names, always the same thing. But when someone began to be really strong, there is some kind of zone around them that not naturally modifies the universe they're in. And for me, what it made me think of that there is a reality on about magic. There is a real effects that can be felt, and it's not only about the way they model the universe around them. It's about the truth that they understand. What is showed in this zone is the truth about the world that they understand. And it's already a lot, so I'm gonna stop there.
I'm jumping in. My turn. This is so great. Okay, so I'm taking this and I'm going a little bit sidestepping-ish and incorporating the science thing. Okay. So what we are talking about are when you're talking about incantations or words that you are using in order to bring your system to a certain state, right? Which is kind of what we're doing, is just bringing us to a certain state. The words do not matter. They don't, right? What matters is that the words that you use are meaningful in some way. And it's the meaning that is the magic, right? You could use the word hippopotamus. And in order to get hippopotamus to work, right? If you were trying to get into a deep meditative state, right? There is a process. There are steps to take to get to there, right? And you could intentionally train your system to go through this process by So you know that in order to get to a deep meditative state, you have to breathe deeply several times and you have to like think about like presence and everything. You could start a practice of saying hippopotamus to yourself over and over again as you're doing this process until you get to that deep meditative state. And you can get to the point that all you have to do is say hippopotamus to yourself and you're in a deep meditative state. Like that is what initiatory practices are. That is what you're doing, is intentionally training your system to respond very specifically to certain words. And because most of us here are on the path of like a witch born of shadow, the solitary practitioner, to creating your own practice and cultivating your own relationship and recognizing your own authority with regards to your like practice. We're all doing this in our own way. Like the possibilities are truly endless. They really are. And one of the big complaints about this, or resistances to this process of, we're not telling you what to do, we are turning this back on you so that you can explore and find it yourself. A lot of people fucking hate that. They want the book. They want to know, like, tell me what to do, tell me how to do it. And we're fully aware that this drives you guys crazy. And you're just going to have to trust the process with this because in a few months it'll make sense, because we want you to be empowered, not dependent on like us to tell you what to do or someone else to tell you what to do. Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump off in Silver's neck.
I'm gonna let Petra go because they popped off and so had to raise their hand again. So I think, yeah.
Hi team. I just wanted to check in with you, Jenny, and just to be like, how are you feeling? We've all said a lot of things. Are there any like new things that have come up? Are you feeling like you're full? I just wanted to like before I kind of data dump, just be like, hey, how are you?
Thank you for checking in.
Mhm.
I think I'm doing okay. I take notes, so wrote a lot of good stuff down. And it's a lot to think about over the next week. So thank you everyone so far who has chipped in. I appreciate you all.
Perfect. I was just like, if you're feeling full, we can like pivot. That's all I was gonna say. It was like check in with that. Oh, my sweater was like under the blankets in my bed because my back is sore on a heating pad. And then I was like, now I'm at my desk so you can see me as a person. And I was like, it's chilly over here by the window. Oh, winter. Anyway, what I just wanted to, like, I said that thing in the chat about kind of like what safety do the perfect words kind of bring. And I think that is probably something to, yeah, exactly. Silver, same. I'm like, this is all my special interest territory. That's why I'm like, I need to check in with you because I can talk about this for hours. But that piece, that feels important because I think that this happens a lot. I think I sometimes do and don't resonate with the like, I don't know how to do this because I have such raging PDA, like pervasive demand for autonomy, that I'm like, whatever, you can tell me what to do and I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want anyway. So there's that piece for me where I'm just like, I kind of was like, how do I not hurt myself? And then I'm just gonna wing it. And I also think that the more you uncover things, the more you grow in your journey, you realize how you've been doing this all along, right? And so I think that that's really important, to be like, if you're at the beginning of something, there's these, like, I might try to put it in the chat in a second. I'll just write it down. There's the stages of competency. So it's like, like being unconsciously incompetent, being consciously incompetent, and then we move to like conscious incompetence where we're like, oh, I know how much I don't know. And then you kind of, the final stage, so to speak, is like unconsciously competent, where it's like, I can just do these things on autopilot, right? And that's with like any skill, to be clear. And the incompetence is not like you're incompetent, the end. It's like you don't know how to do this. Like I mean, I think a nicer, maybe more compassionate word, but psychology isn't known for being terribly compassionate, is like being unskilled or unpracticed, right? Like everyone in this room has stuff that we're unpracticed at, right? Like I don't know how to knit or crochet, like to save my life. If you were like, here's, I'd be like, I can tie a bunch of knots in it. I don't know. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. You know, but if you were like, here, do this other skill of some kind, I'd be like, yeah, I can do that. Like, and we all collectively have things like that where they're like, this is not in my wheelhouse yet. And so we go through those stages of learning. Also, before I forget, Virginie, and also correct me if we say your name differently. If you can put the books that you mentioned when you were talking in the chat, I would be so grateful. You mentioned so many good things, and I was like, I just want to write these all down, but I'm also just like so enthralled in listening to you. So I was like, shit, I need to ask this. But yeah, so I wanted to just like bring that up is like the reassurance of like it is normal at the beginning of anything to feel like deeply overwhelmed and be like, what the fuck am I doing? And I feel like the expletives and swearing are appropriate because it is definitely that deep-seated feeling of like, huh? And I think to make reference to, I think it's very interesting and important to kind of like highlight that, like, you know, you said this word perfect, which I think is so important. Not to like, not in like you use the wrong word. I think that you use the absolute right word, because I think that we're taught in society, under white supremacy, under capitalism, that there is one right way to do things, right? And if we're not meeting this standard of like, you are white, you are a man, you are cis, you are heterosexual, you are Christian, you are whatever, you're then you are wrong. And so I think that like there is a perfect under under our like social society, and I think that it has nothing to do with magic whatsoever. So I think that there are things that, you know, even under the tenets of white supremacy, one of the characteristics is perfectionism. And that learning that helped free me from some of my own internalized, like the parts of me that had clung to perfectionism to keep me safe. Because it wasn't like I was, you know, like met criteria for OCD or any of these kinds of things. And even if someone was like, what are you talking about? You're not a perfectionist. Your house is dirty. It wasn't like, or this is whatever. You were like kind of a gong show in this way. And it was like, I couldn't have articulated like this then, but I realized after so much shadow work and like healing and doing somatic work and all these different things of like, it was never like, it was always a moving target, because it was a thing that it was like, I just want to be safe. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know how to tell you what will make me perfect, but it's the thing that keeps me from being in danger. And that was really like at a nervous system level for me. And I think that realizing that like a lot of that came from like asking the outside world to make me safe, when somatics made me realize that like safety is an inside job, like it's an internal thing. There are like material ways that you are in danger, obviously, like, you know, if someone is physically threatening you, if you don't have food, you don't have a roof over your head, like all these things. If you're a racialized person, you experience racism. If you experience sexism or misogyny or violence or any of those things, like those, I don't want to ever sound like those things aren't real. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the ways in which we, at a very young age, because society is so rampantly unsafe in so many ways for us to even be who we are, have internalized that, like, if I just do it right, then I'll be okay. Yeah. So I just was like, I just want you to know that like in this space, especially, please fuck up. Please. Like that's what we're here for. Like I've come to this space over the past couple of years so messy. There are sasses on like the account, I'm so sure, of like me crying and screaming or like doing like having really big feelings that like I could not have contained in my body by myself. I needed a room full of other witches, other people who were doing this work too, to hold them with me, to be like, you're not crazy. Like that's not insane. This is not too much. And I think that this is the power of community and of collective healing, is that like the things that I just said, there might be people in this room that are like, I've never thought about it that way, but yes, right? Or like, I have thought about it that way, but I didn't know how to put it into words. And like, that's the thing, is like, there's so many times people in this room say stuff and I'm like, and that's why we're here, right? And so I just want to say thank you for being here and being brave and asking that question, and like letting us share with you what we know and what we've learned, and like that remembrance as well, because I think that you know, this season, especially like astrologically, is very intense. I would just like to say, like if you're going through it, you're normal, like whatever normal is actually. But like there's nothing, you're not doing anything wrong. Shit's just crazy. Like it's a lot out here. The energy is intense, and I think that spaces like this where we can kind of hold that together and be like, oh, like it's not just me, can like really help with those things. And the last thing that I will say is about the overstimulation piece, um like Maria referencing me, I'm like, yeah, I am always the person that's talking about this. Because I'm like, I remember, I don't know, when I first started doing healing stuff, I came from like a kind of dissociative place where like I couldn't access my boundaries because of the medications that I was on, and I was getting like death premonitions. I was getting some like truly scary shit. Kind of coming through because my boundaries spiritually for so long had been connected to my body, and I was disconnected from my body, so I couldn't access those things. So like everything was getting through, and it was like, this is intense. And the minute I like kind of came off those meds and kind of woke up, one of the very first things I did within the first few weeks was to be like, I have office hours. Like, you are not to wake me up. I do not fucking like, this is not whatever. I am around during the day. Like, no, and I'm not open to death stuff. I'm not open to this. I'm like, I set like, I literally was having premonitions about people in my life and like animals and other things like dying. And I was like, if I'm not to change it, I do not fucking want to know. Like, this is part of life, and like of life, and I cannot handle this right now. Like, my nervous system cannot. And I want you to understand that like spirit is so much better with boundaries than other human beings. Like literally so much better. And so like I just want to acknowledge that like as a society, we're not great at boundaries. People are really good at enmeshment and codependency and at like violating those things subtly. And it was one of the most healing things for me to do, was to realize that like I can say no to this, and also that you can say yes to it again whenever you want. Like, it is not going anywhere. You're not going to lose things. This is not like that urgency or that like, oh my goodness, like what if I never can do this again? It's not going anywhere. Like, it's a part of you. And also, if you never want to pick it up again, you don't have to. I don't know that I'll ever pick up the death stuff again. I don't really know what the fuck it's for. But if it's there, like, and it comes to a place in my life where I'm like, no, this fits, this makes sense, then I'll open the door again. But you're always allowed to close doors. You're always allowed to say no. And like, spirit will be so respectful, and it can sometimes be so therapeutic. And so I just wanted to say that. And also, like, I see that you're having some feelings and some emotions, and I just want you to say we're here with you. And also in this, if you're like, okay, I'm good, like, that's also available here at any point in time. Okay, so I don't know who's next, so I'm gonna mute myself. But also, like, if you need to like share some stuff that's come up, or you want some space held for that, like, feel free. And also just like ask anyone in this room what you're experiencing. happens really often after I share. When I used to see patients back in the day, they would be like, I don't know why I'm crying. And I was just like, it's like my superpower. Like, I really should just wear a fucking cape. Like, I should just warn people because like, this is just the thing that I do. So I just want to say that like, this is a normal response to stuff that I've shared very often, and everyone in this room can attest. But we're here with you.
Ezra, you want to go jump in? I know you popped off, but you're back.
You can go ahead.
Okay. We're good at bouncing around because it's one of our superpowers. So for reasons you know. And I just loved the question that Sparrow put about therapy versus shadow work, or therapy and shadow work, not like verse one or the other. And I think I just wanted to share my experience, and I think it'll be different for everyone. And so Ezra Silver had put in the chat about, yes, there are therapy offers that those of us that live here in the US, like it's offered through kind of in the genre of like the medical system, which means insurance is involved, and people were taught therapy, you know, a certain way, depending on like where they learned it from, which could be as witches kind of going through this process, we can find maybe that's not aligned sometimes. But my personal experience is I had throughout like my past 20 years, like have had some great therapists. And my experience with therapy is I needed someone to I need to unpack a lot of things, like specific events that occurred, and therapy was a great way for me to do that. Again, I think though, I would say that with the caveat where like you should vet your therapist. Like if you find you're not aligning with your therapist, ask for another one. And I know that there can be like complications with that too, but like this is where situations where I did really feel like I had an aligned therapist. So I needed to unpack a lot of like specific information, starting from like, I don't know, age 5 to whatever, my earliest memories to, you know, current. And I found that was helpful for me to sit in a space with someone for like 1 hour. That was a very focused time for me to like unpack. It can also be exhausting feeling to like unpack all of that, but I felt that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to speak it. I wanted to unpack it. I wanted to tell somebody how I felt about it. And I wanted to get some feedback on it. And again, the therapist that I was working with, shout out to Dr. Fields, like she was great and like, you know, was helping me. She gave me great coping strategies, which at the time I was looking for, because I was like, I don't want to feel like I'm having a heart attack every day from like having a panic, right? Like, so I'd like that to not happen. And I'd like some help with that. And so my therapist did help me with that. You know, there was medications that I tried for a time. There were coping strategies that I've learned. And I was really great, right? Like I was really great at the coping. Okay. But still seeking like something, right? And so now shadow work, there isn't like one definition for shadow work. People may approach and do shadow work differently. Like I see lots of different journals out there on the internet, people on TikTok talking about it. So my experience, you know, from shadow work is something that I learned here at Bright and Dark, and I'm engaging with the shadow work as a witch. And so shadow work for witches is a lot about sorry, my headphones were talking to me. Let me disconnect my phone so it doesn't tell me. So shadow work for witches, you know, was you know, is different because I'm doing this in like this magical space. And so like we talk about, like we're taking a look at the social conditioning, you know, a lot of for that us is like taking a look at how the patriarchy influenced us, how maybe my relatives that practice Catholicism influenced my, you know, my thoughts, beliefs that were kind of given to me that I accepted as my own, which I now realize I have an actual choice to accept them or not. and that there is no right or wrong. There's like 50,000 ways you can go about things. It's just what do you want, right? The world is, it's whatever you want. So shadow work gave me some tools to shift my perspective, which that's what I didn't get in therapy. So that was the big kind of difference for me. And I really felt like, you know, just like in my own path, that the therapy was great and helped like me to be where I am now, and helped me. And then doing the shadow work, it's not like it's because I do still think they're like different. And there's like, I do still think like they're that there's a place for both. And if you want to do like therapy and shadow work, like that's awesome too. My path just happened to be kind of therapy first and then digging into shadow work in the last like, you know, 3 years. And so, but I was always like a self-help book type of person too. Like, right, I was watching Oprah, like, you know, really young, like, cause she would have lots of people on, and, you know, always kind of into like that type of thing. But anyhow, so I think that the shadow work, in summary, what was different is it really helped shift my perspectives, and also wanting to engage in, you know, a connection-based magic. It was really aligned. And I was one of those people. What Jemery said, like, we know you're frustrated. That was me. I was frustrated. I was like, I don't really understand what's going on, but I'm gonna keep coming to these meetings because I feel like I'm going to, you know, like I sat in a meeting with Jemery and another witch, Tina, and we asked her to, I'm a nurse and Tina is a doctor, and we were like, can you please just like, can we read ahead? We were like, we wanted to read ahead, like, you know, like, can we just like get the, you know, and she like in a very nice way laughed at us, because she's like, what you're asking for doesn't exist. First of all, like, maybe she'll write a book someday, but first of all, it doesn't exist. But we were like, oh, okay. And then, but we both were like, okay, but like, we're here for it. And then it was a few months, maybe 6 months, where it just clicked, meaning it connected, and I could see the web and how it all connected, and then it just was like magic. You know, and then like you felt like this magic and this shift. And so just, yeah, I just wanted to kind of share that. Thanks for listening. Over back to Silver. And also, I just wanted to say, Heather, I think you had your hand up, and sometimes Zoom likes to put our hands down, but if you, I just wanted to acknowledge you that I saw your hand up if there was something you wanted to share. All right, over to Silver.
Yeah, Heather, if you wanted to jump in, you can totally skip me if you want, but if not, I can go. Let's see. I love this conversation too, and I wanted to make sure that, because I think sometimes I come across as like anti-therapy, and I'm really not at all. I think it's because I love healing and what therapy is so much that I find the ways that it's not, that it, you know, because like I ultimately am an abolitionist, and I want it to be like the best version of itself, because I can see exactly what it could be. And so I'm like, whenever I'm coming off and saying, hey, like, keep this in mind when you're thinking about therapy. I'm not advocating that you don't go to therapy. I'm a huge proponent of it, especially if you find somebody who is actually in sync with you. Like me personally, I like would love a witchy therapist who does shadow work as well. Because most of the times that I've tried to go to therapy, and I've had some good therapists and I've had some not so great therapists, but most of them were not engaged in shadow work themselves, which made there be like a hard stop, and I couldn't go any deeper with that person. And sometimes I also worry about getting caught up in the story of things, which sometimes happens in talk therapy, which can just, you know, perpetuate the feeling that is harming you over and over again. And so I'm huge proponent of the way that therapy is going now, where it's starting to deconstruct and realizing the ways in which it has been influenced by the Cappy Pappy, and the things like somatic therapy, and, you know, all of these, you know, things that have existed for, you know, since, so, like, I don't know, long ago, but now they're being um integrated into like kind of new forms of therapy, like the tapping type of thing, and is it EMDR or something? Like, I'm terrible with acronyms. I just like mix them up in my head. It's probably like a dyslexic thing. Anytime
Is Silver frozen for you guys too?
Yeah, Silver, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're frozen.
damn.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. I could hear you. That's so funny. Okay, so I love this conversation though, because I think that what really drew me, like, I remember reading my mom's psychology textbooks when I was like a child, and I just would go through it. I've always hyper fixated on how the brain works and why we do the things that we do. And so I think that, like Marie was saying, there's definitely a distinction there. I think in its like most beautiful, like brightest form, like therapy would absolutely just also be shadow work and all of these other modalities that exist. And that you would just, whatever works for that person would, you know, you if someone needs to connect to their body more, which I'd say like majority of people do, just because Cappy Pappy likes to detach us from it. Somatic therapy is a huge thing. All of these different ways that you can get in touch with yourself, it's all trying to do ultimately the same thing, which is help you find your way back to your authentic self, at least in my opinion. So yeah, I think that's the end of my statement. Go ahead, Karen.
Heather.
Or Heather. Yeah.
How's my audio?
Good.
Okay. Hello. I'm kind of new around here, and I'm up in Victoria, BC. And I'm loving this conversation in this community. I guess the thing that really caught my attention today, because we were sort of talking about ritual and like how we develop it. I grew up in a context where my spiritual community expected and encouraged us as children to develop our own rituals, and to sort of, I was in a really sort of reconstructionist Anglican setting. So there was a lot of belly button gazing going on in the organization, and so I was in this privileged space of being taught that we had this like this heritage of our ancestors with this rich storytelling tradition, and yet we were to bring our authentic selves to that and question it and rebuild it. So that's sort of that's my default sort of expectations from being really young. And then I've also I know so much about the hurt that happens in those settings, and what we're doing to move away from the hurts and the abuses and the big Cappy Pappy and all of that as we sort of move inwards. How can I say what I'm trying to there's so much value in doing that inner healing, right? And that's one of the things I'm loving, looking towards this community for more just more perspectives on, and also I think that I I I love to know more about other history, other traditions, other storybooks. And I think that when we're developing those practices that bring us into our bodies, they are so rich when they are connected to a community with a story, with a corporate reality. And I'm reaching out and wanting to just learn more stuff, more stories. And I think that especially since what happened in the world in the last few years, is it possible to say that the pendulum towards inner work might be at its furthest point, and now maybe the pendulum is moving more towards reconnecting with others and creating community? Yeah, I guess that's that's my questions. And I'll leave it at that. I get real tongue-tied in group settings, so thanks for listening to me.
Thanks, Heather. I just wanted to jump on. We've got a little over 20 minutes left. This has been flowing like crazy today, so I just wanted to bring that up so that we could be conscious of that. And so now I'm going to pass to Karen.
Did anybody have a specific way in to Heather? Because I'm closing out what I started with. Okay. Let me get my hand down before I forget. So, oddly enough, what I went through in the last 24 hours is very similar to what everybody said, right? I sent out the message. Ocean and Taryn really helped me. So I felt like, okay, this makes sense. I'm starting to get the intent better. I can kind of let it go until I think more. I haven't felt a strong. I just realized I had a gap with the rituals, so I just reached out. But now, just the conversation made me feel like I don't have to figure everything out today. It's fine. Like I have more understanding. It will come to me when I'm ready. I'm good. So watching a TV show with my daughter last night, and in it, there is a very strong thing between mom and daughter. And I just got so sad and realized I've been really sad about any parts of movies like that. And I didn't have a good mom. Actually, I have a thing in my heart that every single person that said that they loved me was using me, abused me, betrayed me. Like there's really no one that truly just loved me. And I have a thing about that in my heart. So going through this with the movie last night, and I just had to leave. I just went upstairs and just had a good cry. And it dawned on me that there was someone in my past life, like not now, that did love me deeply. And that felt good, and cried some more, and like, went to the whole, like, I really want this back. And then just eventually went to sleep. And I do a lot of processing at night. So this morning when I woke up, I was like, I don't necessarily want that back. But what I came to understand is that I'll just call her she, because it feels very feminine. She is that, and has always been that, not spirit, but spirit that's been with me since I was a youngin'. And because I've never, despite everything that's happened, I never felt alone. I've always had this, I just seem to have been born with it, a trait that I was always forever hopeful. I always felt like it was gonna be okay eventually. And I realized this morning that she is that part of me. She is with me, and there was one time I was very clear she was crying with me. She's, I'm like, this is just so hard. And I was just feeling really down. And she came in as a voice, which doesn't usually happen, and said, I know, and I'm sorry, I'm crying with you, you know. And so very powerful connection with this her. Um, and then so, but with the concept of inviting in and that there is somebody who loves me, I was able to really learn. And then so I could kind of get past the whole like, anybody said they love me, I could kind of get past that like shadow that I have. And so in Jen Ray's this morning, she says somewhere in it, for those who love me. And I was like, oh, of course. Like, duh. Like that's what she means. She's calling to those things that even that I've never felt or understood, consciously felt or understood, that there are things out there that love me deeply, just for me. And so I did write some things down. It's an entire 6 lines, and I don't feel the need to push any further. But when Jenny was talking about like, oh my gosh, overstimulation, I thought to myself, and somebody was talking about boundaries and not at night, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I ever said to her, I need a break, like I would actually be alone. And it's so because she doesn't talk to me like that. She's just here with me. And if there's ever any talking, it's through writing. We co-write, if that makes sense. Like as I'm thinking to myself what I want to write, she comes in and helps me write and helps me see things differently and helps me, but like it's co-writing. It's literally like sitting with your best friend and you're writing a story, and like you're sharing the document. Like I write a line and she writes a line and I write a line and she writes, and you're like, oh yeah, yeah. And then you write a line and you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's funny to think about how different our experiences are. Um but it really helped me realize I don't need a ritual. I'm okay. I'm working towards something that will help me feel prepared to be more open, because while she's been with me, I think there are now that I've started the process to work through that particular shadow, I do feel like there's more out there, so I can start to expand into a team. You call it, Maria, more of a team than just she and I. And if that anyway, yeah, yeah. So it was, I open a door and I invite you in. The part that I don't know where this came from. It was the first spell I ever wrote, and I'm assuming somebody else said it to me, but it was to the powers that be and all who love me, and or all who help me, sorry, because I could never use the word love. To the powers that be and to all who help me, thank you. Because I always feel like you got to say thank you first. And then I open the door and I invite you in. There's another line about a fear that I just need to keep there until I can get past that fear. But anyway, I just kind of felt like that circled around a couple of the comments. And yeah, I feel like I'm in a really good place, and I really, really appreciate everybody's conversations and input, and Jenny, your views on it. And yeah, I think that was it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Karen. I really like that little incantation spelly thing that you said. That's really nice. Before I address, Sparrow had a question in the comments that I can see is being discussed there as well, but we could bring it up. Silver, did you have a weigh in on Karen on anything? You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just was reading that and I was like, oh, I was actually going to tell this story a few minutes ago back when I was on. But in the book Nonviolent Communication, there's a yes, she wants to be part of this. My cat. In that book, she the author tells this story who and this it's a small thing, and it says there's a man kneeling under a streetlight on all fours, and another person comes by and says, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Oh," and the man that's on his all fours says, "Oh, I'm looking for my keys." And the passerby says, "Oh, did you drop them over here?" And he says, "No, I dropped them in the alley, but the light is so much better over here." And the idea, like the idea being that like we often are searching for the things that we want to find in the well-lit places, even though we might not find them there because they're really over in the dark. And so that's kind of whenever anyone asks what shadow work is, I love that it seems like it's obviously deeper than that, but it's succinct. It gives you a really vivid image of like, oh, I got to go into the dark in order to find my keys, that kind of thing. So that's a great question.
And just to go off of that, so in like the way that we do shadow work in foundations, for anyone that's wondering, is so the journal prompt is very much aligned with like the month. Like we're heading into winter, and so like this month is our dreaming moon and how that's aligned. So the journal prompt gives us a framework which to like just discuss, but sometimes that can take you on a rabbit hole, and that's okay. But so we kind of start with a journal prompt, and then that gives you time throughout the month to kind of journal, and you just see what comes up for you while reflecting or writing or singing or doing art about that. And then we come to meetings similar to this one, but we call them Sacred Space, which is a focused discussion on the journal prompt and what came up for you, where we can discuss it in a safe space and you can get weigh-ins if you want or not. And then the end of the month is when we do our spellcraft, which is an external representation of the internal process that we went through. And so that has been helpful for me to have like a focus. And I think Taryn also mentioned like that having like a kind of a focus that's also in line with the way that we're all connecting with the seasons, with the earth, has been helpful. And then you go on this journey, this 12-month journey, and some of us have gone through it again, and then like I'm in like third round of it. So and also just Heather, what's been wonderful about this space is for people to be able to show up where we're practicing connection-based communication in a safe place, and being able to show up in a way that gives you that data to say like, oh, like there actually is a place that is safe, that I can be unmasked and that I can like share these experiences, and we're all like learning and growing together, and we're all like human, and we all like make mistakes, but we're all like trying our best and showing up of what a connection-based communication space can look like as witches. And so we're like super excited that we're all participating together and showing up for each other and for that to happen. And now we have this like new set of data to say like, oh, like this does exist. And so it's just a cool thing to happen, and y'all are part of that. So thank you. Stephanie.
I love what both of you have just said. I like that story, Silver. That's a nice way to visualize shadow work, right? Which we'd probably all explain it slightly differently, right? As all our different perspectives. But, it's oh, generally, about taking a look at and bringing to light like our social conditionings or influences or narratives, any of those things that we may not be entirely conscious of, that is you know affecting how we operate on a daily basis, and our views and our narratives, and kind of shining a light on those and taking a real look at it and deciding if it's something we want to keep, or if we is something we need to um, maybe alter, or what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not going to get it. So, but you know what I mean? Something we want to change or integrate. Um, but I wanted to touch, like Maria was describing, all of the prompts that we get every month in foundations. And I remember my first month in foundations, I don't remember even what the prompt was. It might have been this one or the next. Anyway, and I remember I was like, oh, this is child's play. This is so easy. It was not. Once I started it, and things, the layers and the layers started to appear and peel off, and it's wild how much that work has changed me, and how funny it is to me now that that had been my initial thought, because it was anything but, it's anything but once I really started taking a look at it. But that's because those things were in the shadows for me. I didn't know what was there until I turned the light on to it. And that's what shadow work has been for me. So that's really all I had to say. I'm going to pass it on to Silver.
I just saw that, I think it was Taryn that posted is that the journal prompt for this month? I haven't had a chance to look at it because I just vividly remember the answer to that last year, and like that was like a big one for me. And actually, like in general, failure and success both have been like two different shadows that I have been working on even just recently. So it's cool that came up. That's all I had to say, really. I won't get too into it since we're wrapping up. But this was such a cool SASS, and I loved having all of y'all here. And there were some great questions and topics, and I'm just really grateful for y'all. Thank you.
We still have a few more minutes left if anybody wants to weigh in or share something or anything like that. Feel free.
I just put in the chat. So this is kind of a funny thing. Jennifer, you were talking about some kind of a large barn thing that you found at a thrift store in Oregon that you're using for your manifestation of your, what did you call it? Neurodivergent nunnery. Is there any way that you could pull that up really quickly? Because I just got to tell you, I dropped one off last November that sounds exactly like what you're talking about, and it's really piqued my interest.
I'm literally sitting on top of it. So I would have to like move. I'm in an RV, like everything's like stacked and like, stashed, but it's right here. And it is very obviously an old nativity barn. And it has moss on the roof.
Yes.
And birch sticks for the front to support the front part. And there is a back to it. So it's got an enclosed back. It's not fully open. It's so great.
Very, very similar.
I promise I'll show you guys this because I'm so excited about building this altar that like I'm to the point where I'm overthinking it. I'm so excited about building this altar because it's time to do it, like right now. I just have to do it. I have to take down my ancestral altar and then set up this one in its place. So yeah. I'm very excited about it. I can't wait to show you.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, because there are new people here, that I don't know if I could impress how much we love to answer questions. Like we really love to answer your questions like as much as we can from our own perspectives, because it is important that this like is like a learning space, and that we're not like telling you this is the way. We're just saying like this is kind of how I do it, and to help you find your way, and that you can change that anytime you want to, because as you have like these perspective shifts over time. So the yeah, like I think the app space for me is like a little too quiet. So if this is just like a call or a little poke to like please engage with us throughout the middle times where we're not, to engage in the app space. But then of course we'll be back for the Courtyard Witches the first Sunday of every month, and then for the member witches of foundations and guild, we meet every Sunday. So yes, see everybody like again in all the spaces. And we got other things coming up too, workshops and stuff. So we'll be posting throughout the month. So stay tuned for more places to connect and learn. Woohoo!
Oh, since we have a couple minutes, I wanted to just say that tomorrow we're having for foundations the shadow study, the first one ever. That's like a club, and so I just wanted to put that out there for anybody that might not have read that in Heartbeat, and I hope to see you there.
Ocean, you're gonna ask us what time it is, the first day of daylight savings, because I'm like, I don't know what time anything is. um, it's at a time tomorrow. No.
It's at
Uh,
7 Eastern Standard Time,
yes,
right?
which is
I
yeah,
think.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
4 Pacific time.
Yeah, it goes for 2 hours. So
Silver, I am so obsessed with Mercy. Look at.
I know she's eating my shoelaces.
Oh
They
my
love every
gosh.
spring.
I love
Yeah.
it.
The
I just used
baby's too
my partner
cute.
just used a little vacuum, and so she was getting some of her tension out from that.
So cute.
Well, I'm feeling like this is closure. It's amazing to me how this flowed today, and then it wound itself down in just the right timing, if you will. So I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your day. It was absolutely amazing hanging with you all today, and I love the SASS so much. This was fantastic, and I will see you all in the app soon, I hope. Bye.